from Sarasota, Florida. Beautiful city on the Gulf of Mexico. The Macho Man, Randy Savage, Intercontinental Champion of the world.
It's gonna be over before the fat lady even gets to open her mouth. I'm gonna step into that ring and rip him apart, yeah. I'm gonna tear that yellow-bellied mama boy limb from limb from limb from limb. Let me tell you something, JJ Boba Fett. If you step into that ring tomorrow night for the Intercontinental Heavyweight Championship bout with me, the Slapdown Sultan, you're gonna lose your belt. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. You're gonna lose your belt, and that much, brother, is assured. But let me tell you something, JJ. If you step into that ring with me, you'll be lucky if you don't lose your life. Do you hear me, brother? Listen, brother. The Sultan, you don't want to be no murderer. You feel me? That's why I'm giving you fair warning, right? Stay away from the ring tomorrow night, brother. Let me promise you something. There will be blood.
Oh, my friend. Let me tell you something. Woo! Let me tell you something. JJ Boba Fett, the gilded one, he likes to throw himself right into the middle of it. Woo! You hear what I'm saying? Right in the middle of it. And when I step into that ring tomorrow night in front of 50,000 people, I'm gonna twist you into a knot so tight you're gonna look like a dog's chew toy. They're gonna call you the shutdown Sultan when I'm through with you. I'm gonna wrap you so tight in your little magic carpet that your precious little towel of yours gonna pop right off your head. Listen, brother. Woo! Look at me. You see this watch? Gold. These earrings? Gold. You see these rings? These 10 beautiful rings on each of my 10 beautiful fingers. Solid gold, baby. Woo! I'm covered head to toe with 24 karat. You think they just give that kind of money to jabronis? Look at you. You can't even afford a shirt. I'm over here wearing all minor threads. Brother, if you think the glorious one, JJ Boba Fett, is scared, woo! Let me tell you something. You got another thing coming.
Well, do you see this garbage can? You see this garbage can, brother? I'm holding this garbage can because compared to me, you ain't nothing but garbage. And after I smack you upside the head with it, brother, oh yeah, I'm gonna stuff you in it. Oh, and would you looky here, what is this? Why, inside, someone has already gone to the great courtesy of stuffing a crying towel down in the bottom. What do you know? Well, that's a good thing, brother, because you're gonna be doing a lot of crying very soon. Because comparatively speaking, you are like a grain of sand in the Sahara Desert. Oh yeah. And I'm the entire desert. Don't bet against me. The time is getting near. The winds blow hot across the desert sands, and they bring with them messages. Messages of blood. So go ahead and climb into that garbage can, JJ. Because comparatively speaking, you are nothing but garbage.
Oh yeah? Woo! I'm garbage? Garbage, brother, let me tell you, watch right now, because I'm going to take my shirt off. Yeah, you see this? You see this, camel sniffer? I'm removing my $8,000 shirt. And do you see, brother, you see these pecs? Woo! And now let me tell you something. Watch this, brother. Do you even see? Look at me, my friend. I'm removing each of my $5,000 Italian leather shoes, revealing my 40,000 thread count Parisian socks. Now, Sultan, watch. Make sure you watch now. Look, because I'm taking off my beautiful, expensive, oh so expensive pants. Here they go.
Do not uncover yourself in front of me, infidel. Do not expose my pure and holy eyes to your minuscule and shriveled shame.
Oh, you gonna see my shame, all right. Woo, but it's anything, but minuscule.
By the power of the desert, I will cut your heart out if you disgrace me further.
What's that? You want me to remove my boxes? You want me to?
I will kill you! I will kill you! I will bring my father's Kalishnikov to the Madison Square Garden and gun you down in cold blood.
They're coming off! Here they go! Woo!
That's
there
it!
They go.
Oh, that's it, brother! I'll kill you! And killing you is gonna no longer be murder, but divine justice for your offense against God. Ooh, yeah! Yeah! Ooh, yeah! Yeah!
Hello, friend. The Mystical American Patriots Society is transmitting to you from beneath 4 million cubic feet of solid granite, in the burning heart of the Yellowstone caldera. This is a variety program for normal sandwich-eating Americans with some concerns about living in a deranged, post-Christian technocracy. So, keep your third eye on the sky and your ear to the ground, as Sumo and Smokestack connect your main brain vein to a higher plane. Are you ready? Stand by.
Suplex, are you there? Can you hear me? Can you hear me, brother?
Hailing from parts unknown, he's the 5-time sort of skinny division champion of the world. His in-ring performances have horrified dozens in high school gymnasiums all across this great country. He's fought in places where you'd be pretty concerned about picking up a UTI in the restroom. He's defeated giants and lost his belt to a faction of little people luchadors known as El Pequeño. He may have finished last in Pro Wrestling Illustrated's most entertaining personalities, but we know he's first in your heart. Ladies and gentlemen, give it up for Suplex! Cut the music! I'm so proud to be here today on this dumpster fire of a podcast you call Maps. Or should I say, Craps. Show some respect when Suplex is talking. I'm a 5th-generation performer in the business, and you had better take notice, bucko. Oh, sorry. We said a face promo, right?
Yeah, you're supposed to be the face. The face.
Okay, sorry. Hold on, let me try that again.
Yeah.
Boys and girls and genderless clones, it is unbelievable to be coming to you live-ish from a bunker in the burning heart of the Yellowstone caldera. I'm about to make your main brain vein go insane! Because I'm the 5-time sort of skinny division champion, and I'm here to entertain you tonight. Everybody. USA. That's what I'm talking about. So all you truckers, all you NIMBYs, and all you NEETs out there, here I am, your hero and forever champion, Suplex!
Suplex!
You think you guys have listeners in China? That was kind of my bit, was ni hao.
Yeah,
probably just government workers,
listeners.
you know.
Yeah, I know the A is for American, but I would imagine there's probably some Chinese.
It's also for Asian.
Oh, okay.
I mean, if you want it to be. It's also for African, Arabian, whatever has an A.
Yeah.
If you're Brazil, you're out.
Yeah, that's going to be a problem.
It's a B. Yeah, I know you're in Brazil right now. Everyone, this is friend of the show, Suplex. Suplex and I go way back when I tried to be briefly a professional wrestler.
Yeah.
He got farther in the biz than me, but he suffered a semi-tragic injury in practice one day. And now I think you live in Brazil or Argentina?
So, I still kind of keep the parts unknown bit. My day job, my business is a little, I would say, outside of legal parameters. And so it tends to be better for me if I'm outside of sort of a known location.
Geographical parameters.
Exactly.
Right. Understood. I mean, I live in the van.
Sure, yeah.
Suplex lives Smokestack lives in an undisclosed bunker.
Mm-hmm.
And so he did not wrestle under the name Suplex. You'll have to, maybe someone can figure it out. I don't know. Are any of your matches still available on the internet anywhere? Or
everything's on the internet, right? It's somewhere
Right.
it is. I even though I got farther in business than you did, Sumo, I still didn't do great. I wouldn't say. So I was in a lot of house shows. You met a lot of people in the biz, which is exciting. But there was a situation in the let's say mid to late '90s, I think, where there was a bit that WCW did where they had multiple Stings enter the ring, and I was actually,
I remember that. Yeah.
I was one of those Stings actually. So
Right,
you were
that's
really
right.
close. You'd see me.
That's right. You really bulked up for that one.
Yeah, well, steroids. It's all steroid. I've actually never even lifted a dumbbell. So when you sign up for pro wrestling, they give you just a big old bottle of steroids. And they say, here you go. This is your workout plan.
Yeah. If anyone out there is interested in starting steroids, what you do, first of all, don't. But if you do, they work fantastically.
Yeah.
Hey.
Yeah, they're great.
Like people are all like, hey, let's do supplements, or the doctor's like, take some vitamins. It's like, just give them steroids.
Yeah, they're delicious too, by the way. Tasty.
But the way you do it is you find if you can't find a doctor willing to give them to you on the down low, in my experience, 3 out of 10 veterinarians are cool with it, because there's much less legal tracking of animal prescriptions. So you just invent a dog or a horse that needs some certain steroids or growth hormone, and then there you go.
What do you tell the vet? You say, like, my dog wants to be a professional wrestler. Can you prescribe him some? I mean, under what conditions do you?
I mean, animals get steroids too, and it's the same stuff, just about.
Oh.
So you just say, hey, my dog, and you wink when you do it.
Mm-hmm.
And then if they look at you funny, you leave and go to a different vet.
Yeah.
But I think most steroids come from veterinarians these days. I think that's fair to say.
Cool.
But yeah, you were looking good as that Sting. I never got out of the Ohio Valley wrestling promotion.
Yeah, famous though. Fantastic promotion. If you're gonna go regional promotion, Ohio Valley.
Yeah, great regional promotion. But I never really. I wrestled of course, Al Snow runs that.
Sure. Yeah.
My personal mentor.
Mm-hmm.
And he was, but I could never cut it. You know what it was? I could never get a good finishing move.
Yeah, I felt like you had the body, and I honestly, I feel like your in-ring promo skills were very, very good. But then you would get the end of the match, and then you would literally just lie down and let the other guy continue. Like you have him on the ropes, and he'd be out. And you'd be like, all right, and now for my finishing maneuver, and then you would just.
That's actually true, because I would get confused. We would go to the thing, and I would get confused over which match I was supposed to lose.
Yeah.
Then I'd be like halfway through it, and I'd be like, why is he letting me beat him so bad? And then I'd be like, no, like, the time's up. You got to pin me. And so then it'd just be like, it was so, I wasn't.
I write it down in my hands, win or lose, but then all the glistening oil that you put on makes that run, so you kind of forget.
Well, the thing was, I was supposed to do 3 matches that weekend, and so I got. Look, if you throw the wrong match or try to, they get upset with you.
Yeah, it's a big problem. Big problem.
I mean, that's what separates the greats from the not greats, is being able to win the match you're supposed to win. I always wanted to be like Mankind. He was my inspiration growing up.
Yeah, a great one.
I liked his alternative ego, Dude Love, the best. I think
that was my favorite too. He's really good.
Yeah,
and to be so portly and to be such a mainstream performer,
he was like,
that's a big deal.
Listen. He's like, listen, I'm not going to exercise even one time.
I'm going to wear brown pants.
This leather thing on
never comb my hair.
My favorite thing he ever did was when he was talking to The Rock before I forget which one it was. Maybe it was one of those big pay-per-views. Mm-hmm. And he goes, and that was one of the times we're going to talk about kayfabe today. That was one of his biggest kayfabe breaks.
Okay,
I think he was talking on there, and he started mocking the People's Elbow, Rock's thing. Mm-hmm. And he said it was something to the effect of, the People's Elbow is the dumbest thing I've ever seen in wrestling. And if you think I'm going to sell that abortion. And another thing, he said that on TV. He's like, you think I'm going to sell that abortion? Because he laid down and he jumped over him, then he jumped over him again, and then he did an elbow drop.
But the theatrics were great. People loved it.
That's true. You could. That was proof you could sell anything.
Yeah.
You got the right charisma, you can sell anything.
Yeah.
And The Rock had a ton of charisma.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's all it takes. I mean, really, like, I think in-ring performance is so important. But at the end of the day, you take the better performer over the better technical wrestler for sure. Not even a question there.
Well, with the exception of some of the Mexican lucha libres, which is so great to watch, even if they couldn't act.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Just watching them flip around and stuff.
Yeah, it's fun.
Yeah. But anyway, today is a show about professional wrestling and how it relates to politics, religion, and philosophy, because it does in big ways. I think pro wrestling is really a microcosm of maybe the whole cosmos.
There's no question about that.
That's a big statement, guys.
It's a big statement. It is a big statement. But here's the thing. All right, so there are a couple of levels. One, it's like the most basic dramatization of the archetypes.
Yes.
Okay.
Easily.
Okay.
Yeah,
For
no
like,
question.
so like for like you've got your very sophisticated people and they read like Faust. And then you've got people that their Faust is Hulk Hogan slamming the Andre the Giant in the ring.
Sure. Yeah.
I mean, it's good versus evil. Like this one dude takes on the persona of pure good, and another guy takes on the persona of pure evil. And they even have names that go along with that. Like they've got there's a wrestler called Mankind. First of all, it's an archetypal name, right? He's like the whole of mankind, or the Undertaker. He's death, right? He's death. So you have Mankind versus death in the ring, right?
Oh.
Or you have the Ultimate Warrior. He's the archetype of the warrior himself. Or Macho Man. He's the archetype of masculinity, right?
Right.
They even it's the most basic, least sophisticated form of the mythological structures, just fighting it out in the ring.
Yeah, the Shockmaster, obviously. It's the same exact thing.
Did all this just sort of happen, or were there some literature scholars in the office writing all this out and putting these things together?
That's the beautiful thing. I'm pretty sure it all just happened.
So pro wrestling its roots are completely and unabashedly in carny world, right?
Yeah.
So you basically had carnies who may or may not be sorcerers, right? That kind of invented the whole thing. And I think there's no question. They had all this in mind when they were sort of crafting this art they've handed down to us.
Well, a lot of people, pro wrestling goes back, pro wrestling is America. It goes back in America to before the turn of the 1900s. Before the 1900s. Carnivals going around from town to town, and there'd be guys, they had shoot wrestling matches that for a while in the 1800s were real, and a guy would come around and he would say, I challenge any man here in this town to a wrestling match, and if you can go 3 rounds with me, you win the prize, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then they figured out after a while, hey, if we script this a little bit, we can make it more exciting, because our guy is just knocking them out all the time, and it's not very fun, right? And then it just carried on from there. And they had several guys. One guy, you go to a big city, and you'd have one of your carny members pretend to be a guy in that city, and he'd come out and they'd put on a whole show. And I think Al Snow told he said that the public has known wrestling has been fake since 1938.
Yep.
But before that, they were sort of convinced.
Yeah, well, they were reporting it in the news as like legitimate match, like a sports page, right? You have your box score of the pro wrestling, and then in '38 they're like, not so much. We're not going to call them out as being fake, but we're not going to tarnish the beautiful work of our journalistic integrity with these pro wrestling matches.
Right. They're not going to be in a sports page anymore.
Yep.
Right. But yeah, shoot wrestling, I like folk wrestling styles. Shoot wrestling / catch as catch can. Catch as catch can wrestling, or catch wrestling, is the American folk style wrestling. That's what Abraham Lincoln did. That's what they all did. It's very similar to Sambo, which is just saying that it's just very similar to the way that people wrestle when they wear jackets.
How does sumo wrestling look at pro wrestling? Because there's this whole like legitimate versus illegitimate thing in the sports world, but I feel like sumo may understand that definitely the theatrics better than other sports do, right?
The sumo, the Japanese, in my experience with sumo wrestling, because I also sumo wrestled, not in Japan though, but I did do it with former Japanese sumo wrestlers, so I have some inside information here. The sumo world has perfectly blended in a very Japanese way the fake and the real, which is to say a lot of the matches are real, but some of them are purposely thrown for dramatic effect, largely enforced by the Yakuza.
Wow.
So the Yakuza is they have their hands in a lot of the businesses of Japan.
So do you really think that the Yakuza just have like artistic interests in mind when they pay somebody to throw a match?
Well, they do in that the drama created pulls more people into the stadium.
Okay.
Well, I don't know if you remember that bit in was it Freakonomics where they talked about kind of basically in sumo wrestling tournaments you can either increase your rank or decrease it based on whether you have a winning or a losing percentage. And so they did like the math on the matches where it was sort of like you had a guy that was guaranteed to have a losing record versus one that was on the fringe. And an inordinate amount of times the guy on the fringe won. And so the implication is because there's money at stake here, this guy is kind of working behind the scenes with this other guy to make sure he wins the match. Yeah, you can tell in the statistics that there's some riggery going on if you pay attention, because the underdog wins way more than he should, and that's because if the underdog gets promoted up, there are these different ranks in sumo wrestling, which are sort of hard to describe to a non-sumo enthusiast, but basically, almost everybody is in the bottom 90%, and they get paid basically nothing. But if you get up into the top 10%, you start getting real money. And so a lot of guys are like, look, I'm so close. Let me win a couple matches, and I'll give you a cut for the first year of my salary, right? Oh. And then because you're so high up there, you're not going to be demoted, right? And that's how it goes all the time. And the Yakuza, they also like, if there's a young buck coming up, they're like, hey, he'd draw a lot more seats. Plus, there's a lot of theatrics involved. There's this whole ritualistic. If you win, you have to do this whole ritualistic bowing thing. It's very, Yeah, it's a lot of hassle.
But the Japanese, because of that, they still are they took on to pro wrestling instantly. The second they saw pro wrestling, they were like, yes, that's for us. Come over here. Let's start the Japanese version.
Oh yeah, well
it's even more insane.
Culture, like for it to be a premier 5-star type match, it's typically done in the Tokyo Dome. Like people, that is like where they regard as like the some of the best work is done.
Yeah,
in Japan.
I think the best of all theatrics are because the Japanese are so capable of just going with absolute nonsense.
Mm-hmm. That's what's great. I feel like the kayfabe feels like a Japanese word. It's not really, right? But it feels like a Japanese word.
I have researched this, and everyone I've talked to has a different explanation. I don't think there is a definitive etymology behind the origins of the word kayfabe.
Which is so fitting.
So give us a little... You've used this word a bunch of times in our prep, and I have no idea what you were talking about. So break. What is kayfabe? What does it mean? How did it come? What's up?
So kayfabe is Kayfabe. Is that right, Suplex?
You got it.
Kayfabe is it may be Pig Latin for be fake, like sort of Pig Latin-ish for be fake. Yeah. And what would happen is in the classic days of pro wrestling, even as early as like the 90s or as late as the 90s. So let's say a reporter or someone walks into the locker room or the hotel of the wrestlers who's not in the know that it's not real, it's not fake. He's not in. I mean, he knows, but he's also not supposed to know. Mm-hmm. One of the wrestlers, maybe Suplex, shouts "Kayfabe," and everyone drops back into character.
Yep.
That makes sense.
Yeah, there's a great bit about
be fake, and then you drop down.
I feel like it's Pat Patterson has a story about that where the wrestlers always would do that as one of the workers in the arena or wherever they would enter the room and they'd all yell "Kayfabe, Kayfabe," and they did this for a number of years. At some point in time, he goes, "Look, guys, I don't care about all the racket, but my name is Alex, not Kayfabe."
Kayfabe, yeah, the guy. The guy that came in here after, wasn't he like the maintenance guy or something?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
So he was walking in all the time, and they would just go kayfabe, kayfabe, and he thought they're saying his name.
Mm-hmm.
But that's just the signal across the thing, like, hey, I know you're out of character right now. Drop back into it.
Yeah.
Because a person that's not in on the show has come in, right?
It's the basic definition, but kayfabe in and of itself is a it's a bit of a lifestyle, and I think between audience and performer is a bit of an agreement to about what's happening in front of us. Like you said, since 38 or so, we've been very open and apparent that pro wrestling is scripted. Hey, fake. I draw the line at fake. I don't think it's fake.
Agree.
I don't like fake.
Scripted.
Yeah, it's scripted. Predetermined.
It's like saying a play is fake.
Yeah,
That's not the point. Yeah.
Right.
And by the way, things that we think are real are fake too, in large part. So,
right.
Anyway, so you've got this kayfabe I think of it as the most important thing about pro wrestling, and also the least important thing about pro wrestling. Because at the end of the day, if we're all in agreement about it, it's just sort of in the background. It's just the medium by which we're doing something larger and greater, right?
Right. But here's the question, and this is a very interesting question, because it connects. This is how we're going to connect it to everything else. Why is kayfabe necessary? Because kayfabe is interesting because pro wrestling's supposed to be real, but it's not. But it's not. It's not on a stage. It's not in a theater per se.
Right.
And so the line between when the actors are on and off is completely blurred. Because kayfabe was extended to the point where, if you're a rival with this other guy on the stage, don't show up in the same car.
Right.
Because that breaks the illusion. An audience member coming past may see you arrive, and then it's like, well, they're not supposed to be together. They're rivals. Even though the guy knows it's fake. Mm-hmm. He knows it's not real. But still, he's paying money to jump into this delusion for a little bit. Right, and you are disrespecting his experience to show up in the same car. And then there was also, while you're rivals, don't hang out at each other's house. And the kayfabe was so seriously taken that it began to actually happen. A lot of people were like, well, we started acting like we were enemies so much, we started to actually dislike each other.
Yeah, there's a famous bit about Kevin Sullivan, who was a wrestling booker, would book the matches and all that, was married to a woman, and he booked an angle to where another wrestler would essentially be romantically involved with her. And so they kept kayfabe, they traveled together, and maybe even stayed in the same hotel room. I can't remember. Anyway, all that to say, she ended up leaving Kevin Sullivan for this other wrestler, right? So the kayfabe becomes reality.
The kayfabe becomes reality. It's a classic sense of LARPing it till it happens.
Yes.
Like the Undertaker famously, his bit was he's the Undertaker. He's like death. He's like an occult wizard magician.
Okay.
Right. And he got so into his role, because he did this for 10 years, that there had to be an intervention in the WWF where everyone agreed, look, we're no longer referring to him as Undertaker. We're going to call him Mark, because he's forgotten who he is.
No way, man.
And and so on the show, on Monday Night Raw or whatever, they'd be like, now Mark, and they'd say it very explicitly, I'm going to wrestle you tomorrow. Mark. Because Undertaker, he took his bit it grew so insane. He was crucifying people, tying them to crosses on the
dude
behind the and he would sit in his chair and do magic spells. It was so, and this happened so many times. They would do the kayfabe so hard that they would sort of become that person.
Yeah.
At what point does this become sort of a magical thing?
Exactly. It is sort of a magical rite.
Because if you can create this character and then possess someone with it, or possess yourself with it and become a different person, I mean, it's transformational stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not something to just sort of, it's fake and gay. I mean, that's legit.
Right. Well, Bret Hart, he was a famous face.
Mm-hmm.
Famous good guy. Maybe the most famous. And
definitely in Canada for sure. There's no question about it.
And he felt this. He began to feel this enormous moral weight on him to be like the virtuous good guy over and above everybody else. And he was like really stressing out about it because everyone was looking at him like, you're the virtuous hero.
Wow.
And he's like, I'm really not, but I guess I have to become that, and,
yeah, well, I think that's why John Cena, who's in modern in the current product that happens, I think he's taking that to heart, and so you see him constantly doing visits to children in hospitals, and I think that's one of the reasons why he's been able to be so successful when a lot of people criticize his in-ring work, being able to live up to being a hero, to being Odysseus, right?
Yeah, he was a face. And they were like, and he was like, he just played that so hard, he started actually becoming that.
So is somebody called a face is a good guy in this archetypal system? Okay.
Well, so explain that Suplex. Explain the terminology.
Right. Yeah. Just from the outset, you typically in a match, you're the villain who is going to be the heel, and you have the good guy or the hero who is the baby face, and people have tried for years to sort of invert that formula and be like, well, we're in a postmodern culture. We can do two baby faces, in an angle or in a match, and the audience will just pick who they like best, and it'll be something really interesting and never been done before. And consistently, it bombs because the human soul, I think, craves good versus evil, waging the war of good versus evil in the center of the squared circle. Yeah,
and the lowest. I mean, I don't want to insult pro wrestling fans, but they're not the most sophisticated of Americans. But the lowest common denominator resists the postmodern completely because they don't have enough IQ to trick themselves into it. Basically,
is this like the either end of the bell curve end up agreeing?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Bell curve. And so, like, all of this postmodern stuff has just fallen completely flat.
Good. Yes. Good.
In pro wrestling. And you have to have, it's the most basic, most traditional archetypes that end up playing out the day. And it's very hard also to transition from being a heel to a face.
Yeah, I mean, some can do it on a dime, but they were just, I think really more is the charisma of the performer than it was the buying into the audience. But it's a very rare thing. There's kind of one famous example where that happened in the middle of a match between The Rock and Hulk Hogan. And I mean, really, it took two of the all-time greats or something like that to happen. Basically, The Rock went in as the face, and in the middle of the match, sort of the audience just turned a bit, kind of acknowledging the contributions of Hulk Hogan to the industry. And it was just this unprecedented thing in the business that's really hasn't happened before or since.
Yeah, and that was fantastic work of both of them. They really were the two best because they noticed that shift in the audience and they went with it.
Yep.
Which most people wouldn't have done.
It's one reason to me why you can't call pro wrestling fake, because something like that, I mean, there was a script to begin that, and the performers are improvisers, and they are kind of reading the room a bit, and are able to kind of mold the craft to be something different than what it was designed to be. Yeah. I mean, that's the definition of reality to me.
Yeah. So here's the thing about kayfabe. So you got this kayfabe, which is this. Here's the thing. Politics is also kayfabe.
Yeah.
Yep.
Like the two parties work together, but there's this huge theatrics of like they're actually enemies. Right. But in private, they go to the same barbecue.
Yeah, that's true, man. Absolutely.
It's everything is kayfabe at every level of the world. And Al Snow used to say, he would say, look, there's something fake in everything. There's something fake about everything you do and about everything we all do. And he said, once you figure out what that is, the world makes a lot more sense. Mm-hmm. And he's coming from a pro wrestling world. And he's like, what's the fake thing about wrestling? He's like, the fake thing isn't what we do in the ring. The fake thing is the audience's belief. And that's what we have to keep up because they know it's not real.
Right.
But they're faking their belief. And he said this, and he goes, that's also true in like, and this was a very profound thing. He said, that's also true in a lot of religions. The fake thing is the belief. People don't really believe it, but they pretend that they do, and the priestly class pretends that they also do, and then together they're in this. Because that really hit home to me over this whole pandemic shutdown.
Uh-huh.
All right, so here's the thing. As our listeners deduce, probably, I am Catholic, but sort of in a weird way. But anyway, the Catholics have really, I think they've broken kayfabe over this pandemic, because officially the line is, look, at the Mass, we have the actual body and blood of Jesus that you ingest in the form of bread and wine. And this is salvation for your soul.
Right.
And also, if you commit a mortal sin and die, you go to hell. And the only way to get absolved from that is to go to confession, right?
Right.
They so quickly drop both those things for fear of a virus.
Wow.
Right? Like every state in America has suspended their masses, and almost every state has suspended confessions.
Wow.
And it's like, well, do you really believe? Do most of, and I know there's some that actually do, but it's like, do your bishops really believe that this stuff is necessary for your eternal salvation? Do they really, is this just they're keeping up a show, and then you participate in keeping up? Like the laity doesn't believe it, and the priestly class doesn't really believe it. However, the institution sort of believes it for you.
Okay.
Right? Does that make sense?
Uh-huh.
I kind of wonder about that with the story in the Old Testament about David eating the showbread, Right. Okay, this is a rule. Yeah, we gotta follow this rule or your pains of death, right? And then he's like, oh, we're hungry, though. We don't have anything else to eat.
Yeah, but it's like, that rule's fine except when things actually matter. And then you break, like Jesus does this all the time. Most of Jesus's ministry is breaking the kayfabe. He's like, yeah, but look, guys, the Sabbath isn't really for all this nonsense. He's like, look, if your cow fell in a pit, wouldn't you go get him out on the Sabbath? He's like, then why can't I heal a guy on the Sabbath? Right? And so he's like, look, it's not real. You've built this artifice here, but let's pay attention for a second. I sort of feel like most of Jesus's ministry is like, okay, but what if you guys actually believe stuff?
So I guess the kayfabe had been kind of layered on top by the priestly class of the underlying principle, of the underlying command, or what have you.
Right.
And then Christ was just saying, hey, you don't really believe this.
Right. And most people don't really believe the things they think they believe, as evidenced by their actions. Like most Catholics apparently don't actually believe that confession is necessary to get to heaven, because there's a lot of chances to die happening in this pandemic, with a lot of chances to not get absolved for eternity. Right? Because they're just missing out on it. And so, but here's the thing. I think and me and Suplex were talking about this the other day, I think even the Bible breaks kayfabe here and now, and every now and then. Classic example, Book of Job. Okay? So on the surface, God and the devil are in a battle of eternity. But behind the scenes, in the first chapters of Job, the devil's up there hanging out with God. And he said, hey, look, you know what? I think we could get at Job. And he's like, I don't know. You think so? Let's see. And then you're off to the races, right? And so it's like, one, why is the devil still in heaven? Why is God making deals with him? Why, and so then you get like, well, what's going on here?
Well, that's his role. He's the accuser. So you have to be there. You have to be in the court to make accusations. Right?
You have to be in the court to make accusations. Yeah. So that in a way means that what the devil is doing is sort of his scripted role.
Well, it's also we imagine the devil as this red guy down in hell with a pitchfork, coming up to mess with us, but the Bible doesn't really present it that way when you read it. So it's breaking our kayfabe,
Right. Well, the devil's on the left-hand side of God. Christ sits at the right-hand side because he's our only advocate, right?
Yeah.
And so the accused sits on the right-hand side, and the advocate sits on the right-hand side with him. And then, the defense sits on the right-hand side, and then the accuser sits on the left.
Yeah.
So the Bible never talks about who sits on the left-hand side of God because it's Satan.
Okay.
And honestly, like I think the kayfabe plays out the way that it does in the Bible, intentionally, right? I mean, I think for the effect that it has. I think about this, you think about what you call a more legitimate sport like baseball,
Yeah.
and how there's some elements of kayfabe in baseball, but one situation where you had this dramatic, amazing moment was when the Red Sox finally conquered the curse of the great Bambino, gone like decades and decades of not winning the title, and then they do, and in order to do that, they have to conquer their arch nemesis, the New York Yankees. They're down 3-0 in a series, right? They come back dramatically to win. And so that would be your moment of like, oh yes, they've overcome, and this is if you were to write it kayfabe after they beat the Yankees, they're the champions and they've done it. But in real life, in an unscripted event, they have to then go to the World Series and play the Cardinals in what ended up being a little bit less dramatic sweep, right? And so you can't if you're not kayfabing it. It's not going to work out quite as neatly as when you kayfabe.
You can't put the emotional peak with the actual finish.
Okay.
Sure.
In real life, right?
And that's the beauty of wrestling.
Right. Yeah, but is that you can. And this idea, I was thinking a lot about this idea about everything being kayfabe, and then I realized, this is why conspiracy theorists are not liked. Not because we're wrong or crazy, but because we're breaking kayfabe.
Yes.
It's like, look, hey guys, money isn't real. And everyone's like, shh. We all have agreed to this lie. Don't blow it.
So that's why people lose their minds at me when I talk about Building 7 is because it's like, no, do not violate the thing. We've all agreed that office fires did it. Now stop messing it up. Is that the deal?
That's
I'm breaking
100% because
okay.
There's a lie at the center of every civilization. And the lie at the center of ours, well, we have probably several. But think about Al Snow used to say he had 8 things you don't do in the ring because they look too fake. And he said number 1 among them is throwing a punch. Why? Because everyone's actually been hit in the face. And they know what it feels like and they know what it looks like. Right. Most people have not been suplexed. So you can do that and then fake it. Right. And so he said, he's like, well, think about, so it's like, you don't throw a punch in the ring, even though in an actual fight, that's your number 1 go-to. Right. And so the most common sense thing is the thing that never happens because it reveals the falsehood of what's going on. And then you think about that and you go, well, what's the punch that isn't thrown in politics? Or what's the punch that isn't thrown in religion? Mm-hmm. Right. And one of the things that isn't thrown in politics is that was recently thrown and makes it quite interesting is just printing money to give to people.
Yeah.
Because you think like, well, we just make money out of thin air and we have poor people. The obvious solution is just to print money and give it to the poor people. Mm-hmm. But see, you have to keep up the illusion that the money is rare and precious and valuable. So you can't do that. That's why universal income can't happen. Because if you do that, people are just like, well, just give me money all the time.
Right. Just keep printing it. Yeah.
It breaks the illusion that it's real.
So
right? Even though anyone that's actually looked into it knows it's not real. So it's like anyone that's actually looks into it knows that professional wrestling isn't real. If you say it in the ring, if you're about to hit the guy and you say, hey, this isn't real, and then you suplex him, it breaks the whole spell.
Right.
Right? Just like that, you can't just... That's one of the punches that isn't thrown in politics that you see. It's like, well, why wouldn't that... Because that breaks the kayfabe.
So I've got a pitch for a punch in both politics and religion.
Go for it.
So what about just confessing you don't know the answer to something? Because I feel like in politics and religion, like you're never going to see that punch thrown. But in reality, like when you're having a conversation about really important things or things that man has wrestled with for forever, mm-hmm. you're going to be like, yeah, I don't know, maybe, right?
Right.
I feel like part of the beauty of this show is that you guys are very straightforward about that. Like, like here's some stuff, but we don't know. It's sort of the unknown territory. And gosh, Christians have done this thing forever. I think about the whole like predestination versus free will bit, which we probably don't have 3 hours to talk about that right now. But even your most hardcore predestination follower or your hardcore free will follower, it's got to have concessions to the other side, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Right. And if you don't eventually come down and say, okay, it's a mystery. Okay, it's obviously a mystery. So is the Trinity. Right?
Yeah, I thought we can do that with the Trinity, but predestination free will is one that, to me, at least from my experience in Christian circles, is one that you pick a side and then you ridicule the most extreme position of the other side without giving sort of any nod.
No, don't trust a Christian leader who won't cop to the fact that free will and predestination are a mystery. There's your takeaway number 1 today.
And also later, if we have time, maybe I'll explain the Trinity. Hey, bold claim.
Okay.
but no, they like another one like this was, and what happens is also this is what makes it so interesting. When you break kayfabe in wrestling, it destroys the match, and when you break kayfabe in society or religion, it destroys the society or religion. Like prime example was the Reformation, right? And so just like you can't print up money all the time, even though it comes from nowhere, because it breaks the illusion. Exact same thing was happening with indulgences, right? So the church is like, hey, we can get rid of we can just declare that your punishments for sin have been wiped away, right? But you have to do these certain things to get it to happen. Like you have to give us some money on a holy day, maybe, and you have to have done this X and Y, and then you get it, right? There's all these conditions. And Martin Luther stood up, tremendously breaking the illusion, the kayfabe, and he said, well, if you can do that, why don't you just do that for everybody every day? Yeah. And just do it for the whole world. And everyone was like, shut up. That's not, you can't, no, look. Everyone was like, no, I know, no, it's just a conniption because that would give the game away. Because if you say, the official line of the indulgences is that it removes the punishments due to you for your sin, which you may pay either in this life or in purgatory. Okay, so like you may be forgiven, which this is a whole problematic statement anyway. You may be forgiven, but you still have to be punished, right? And so they're like, well, you've got this punishment built up from your sin, and so if you don't pay for it here, you pay for it there. But because we can bind and loose, because we're the church, we can bind whatever we bind on earth is bound in heaven. We'll just forgive you all your sins, all your punishments for your sins, right? And then you don't have to worry about purgatory. But then, so Martin Luther stood up. He said, well, if you can do that, why don't you just do it for everybody all the time? And they were like, because if we did, everyone would notice that they were still suffering for their sins.
Yeah.
It's like you can't. It's like just if we print up the money, people realize it isn't worth anything. And that's why today, still, indulgences come with like, hey, you got to go do it on a holy day at the cathedral, under a door, after you've said your Hail Marys and you have ash on your head and you're standing upside down or whatever. There's all these conditions.
That's still a thing?
Oh, for sure. Indulgences are still a thing.
I had no idea.
They just don't talk about them much anymore in public.
Oh,
and they don't sell them for money.
Okay.
But they do have all these things you have to do for it to like count. Because you have to maintain the rarity of the thing, right?
Right.
Because if you're going to say you no longer suffer the punishments of your sins, then people will be like, why am I still suffering so bad?
Yeah, yeah.
It totally breaks the illusion. It breaks the kayfabe. And the priesthood class is in on it. I like this is, I don't know if you guys ever read or listen to Zizek, the communist philosopher. Yeah. He's no good communist. Oh. But he would say, he had this bit, he was like, look, it's like Santa Claus. It's like Santa Claus. He goes, you see the parents are there Christmas Eve and they're setting out the presents for the
the child and you ask them, why are you doing this? Do you believe in Santa Claus? Like, oh, of course not. I'm not an idiot. I just don't want to break the illusion for my kid and spoil the magic and so on and so on. And he says, and then an interesting thing happens. He goes, a child of a certain age, you go to them, he says, do you believe in Santa Claus? And they go, shh, no, of course not. I just don't want to break the illusion for my parents. I don't want to spoil them. They're having fun. So doing this, right? And that can continue until people are like through high school, I've seen. Because they don't want to give up this. And so it's like the parents don't believe in it and the children don't believe in it. Nonetheless, the belief functions because the institution of the family believes it for you. And that's what happens in a lot of religions. And this happens in Islam. It happens in Judaism, all of them. It's like, well, the laity doesn't believe in it and the priests don't believe in it, but the church believes in it. The organization believes in it. And that's enough. It believes in it on our behalf. It's just like burning a candle, or like in Buddhism, they have this thing called a prayer wheel. I don't know if you've seen it. You write your prayer down on some paper, and you put it in a pinwheel, and stick it somewhere so the wind turns it around, and that's like praying. And then you can go off and you can think about sex or murdering your brother or whatever. But objectively, you are praying because the wheel is turning. Or the Christians do this by lighting a candle. Like you say some prayers, you light a candle. The flames go up. You're praying, even though in your mind you're thinking about, how to steal money or whatever.
Is that what the candles are about?
Yeah, it's a form of continuous prayer, right? Okay. It's like you offload. It's a way of offloading the offloading prayer onto a tangible object.
Is this like a religious homunculus? Is that what this is?
Very similar, very similar. But these days, but you see this all the time. All this kayfabe happens everywhere. Like I've known so many devout, good Protestant old ladies, Methodists, Baptists, what have you, who all the time talk about, well, I'm ready. Whenever the good Lord takes me, I'm ready to go. Mm-hmm. I can't wait to be with him in heaven. But the moment they get a little sick, it's like, call 911. Get the doctors in here. It's like this conniption to stay alive. It's like, well, you don't really believe it, right? But nonetheless, they act the part, and their congregation reinforces it. Mm-hmm. And so the illusion, the kayfabe persists, just like the wrestlers know they're not, what they're doing is not 100% for real. And the audience also knows it. But nonetheless, in the context of the ring, it happens, right? And it's believed.
And to make a point from that, like there's some really important stuff that happens because of the buy-in to kayfabe, right? I mean, in beauty, I think, and art, the example or the analogy I like to give is, pro wrestling is a lot like a dance. The movements may be prescripted, but there's a lot of improvisation there. Sorry, I had a hard time getting that word out. It takes two willing partners that have great chemistry, together. And then you can look back at this thing and say, like, wow, that music was pre-recorded, and maybe some of those steps, they've practiced those before, but look at what it produces. Yeah. And I think that we see that even in some of the things that you're mentioning, like, or even within religion, there might be some practices that we keep, traditions that we keep that in and of themselves don't maybe have the most merit in the world, right? But they get us in the mode of the dance, and the dance is beautiful.
Do you think religious art falls into that? It's where you'd have artists during the Renaissance being patronized to produce this beautiful religious art, and maybe in their personal lives they didn't really ever manifest their beliefs that they, that of their patrons.
Right.
But they still produced incredible art, that we benefit from.
Could be. I mean, Michelangelo being a prime example of that. He would dig up dead bodies to like draw the anatomy and stuff.
Gross.
And he didn't personally dig them up, but he would hire. He'd get the grave digger. Like, hey, listen, keep the body out for a little bit. Okay. I have to, because he was very dedicated to drawing the human form, right? And you can't find someone more still than a corpse.
Yeah.
So that was his practice, that was his practice models. And so he would pay them to like just lay them out for a while, and I'll try to draw them, and of course they'll be nude, which adds another layer of taboo on it. Like he's got a nude corpse out here he's drawing, right? But that's how he got so good at his thing. And that's why we have the Sistine Chapel. That's sort of why I say the devil sits on the left hand of God, because it's sort of always necessary in a weird way. Like, it's this warp and the woof, like when you're doing your knitting or whatever, you have your warps and your woofs, and that's how the thing holds together. Mm-hmm. Right. You have your under, over, over, under, over, over, under. And that's how it's like the two strings hold each other up. And it's like this, I forget sort of where I'm going with this, but so you've got your dark side, your underside, right? You've got Michelangelo paying the grave robber to say, hey, or the grave digger to leave the corpse out so he can draw it naked. And then that produces the Sistine Chapel. Right. Right. So you've got the taboo, which then enforces the thing that we consider good. But actually, they both rely on each other in a weird way.
Yeah. So
and yeah.
It's kind of like a Christian eschatology. I don't think Satan is ever annihilated. He's banished to hell forever, but he's there. Everybody lives forever. The balance is maintained, I guess, as you might put it.
Yeah, well, I often wonder, because I know you know that God loves Satan, because he has to.
Why does he have to?
Because God is love, right? God created Satan, and he must have created him out of a loving act.
Jacob I loved and Esau I hated.
Well, yeah, but he must love Esau also. Like, like that's sort of like a relative thing.
Yeah, it's his creation too, right? I mean, it's got to pain him, right, that things went the way they did.
Right, and that Satan also, like, that's why their fight is so bitter, is because only jilted lovers can fight that hard.
Okay, the betrayal of it.
Yeah, only jilted lovers, and so the love still persists. Mm-hmm. Like, if Satan didn't care about God, he wouldn't do anything. Right, he only cares about him because he's trying to either get back at him or impress him or get back in his good graces.
Mm-hmm. In the biz, we'd say that the angle has no heat. If you don't have two people that have a connection and at one time maybe even a love or a care for one another, one of the most traditional wrestling storylines is you've got tag team partners that decide to kind of go their separate ways and have this feud that lasts over however long. And it's that background of love and care for one another that gives the grounds for conflict later.
Okay.
Yeah. The original cooperation gives the grounds for the current animosity, which gives the grounds for the future reunification. It's like that's like the warp and the woof. It's the yin and the yang, and they go together, and they have to go together. Like, you can't have one you can't have. This is maybe how I explain the Trinity. So you can't have something that's all warp and no woof. Mm-hmm. Just like you can't have all light and no dark. Mm-hmm. Like, and this is like, okay, like, so imagine you have a star in space, all right, and it's producing nothing but light. Mm-hmm. Nonetheless, when you look out in space beside it, what do you see?
Yeah, I get you.
Blackness.
Yeah.
There's no light unless a planet floats into view to receive the light. Mm-hmm. And that's because it always takes at least two. Mm-hmm. Right? Something by itself, existence is relationship. Right? Like, you can't have a wave that's all crest and no trough, or all trough and no crest. Mm-hmm. Just like you can't, if you're making light but there's nothing to receive the light doesn't exist. You're a star in space. And you just produce blackness unless something is there to receive it. Okay. Right? And that's why God must be multiple and also unity. Because the star and the planet are together producing the light.
Right.
Right? But you can't have just one without the other. And that's why you do need, like, you need this. It's all wrestling. It's all pro wrestling.
Hey, can I throw another a punch at you here?
Sure, give me another punch.
All right. So, again, the punch is like the thing that you would expect to happen in a fight, but generally speaking, you want to stay away from it because it kind of shows behind the curtain, right? But the thing is, and if you watch hours of pro wrestling, neglecting your family and friends, as I often do, you would notice that punches do happen in wrestling, right? And to Al Snow's point, they look bad. They look really, really bad because we know what a punch should look like and what it actually looks like. And truly, like an actual punch is less awe-inspiring than what you see the work in the ring done. So anyway, all I'd say the background for this is kind of a Sunday school answer, but I think that in both politics and religion, genuine agape love is one that you don't see the way you would think that you would. And to kind of given the context of the current pandemic situation, like I think we saw a little bit of agape love out there, and it felt kind of weird, and it wasn't perfect, but you think about the whole stimulus bill, like, gosh, how long if they had their normal timeline of putting something like that out, would that bill get passed in our lifetime, right? I mean, like, how long would people be debating on which interest group should get which amounts of cash, how much the money should be, what the rules are? Again, in my day job, I'm in the financial world, and things with the IRS take a long time to change and to get money in people's hands. And yet we're able to do it, and it still took longer than you would hope that it would have, but it happened relatively quickly in congressional view or whatever. So I think that's a punch that we actually, we saw a legitimate punch there. It was kind of weird, but in general, if you're advocating on behalf of your constituents, you would think you'd see a lot more agape love than what you really do. But instead you see more kind of financially driven interest group type stuff. It's sad.
So the stimulus broke kayfabe on a loving basis.
Exactly.
Made an exception.
Yes.
Made an exception to the political kayfabe. I like that. That's awesome.
And you're right. Like you would think like, oh, we believe God is love, so you'd see more love, and you don't see very you don't see very much. So do you? So it's like, well, do you really believe it? And this is why one of the ways people get around this is they say like, oh, well, actually, this is a line I hate so much. Love is a verb. It's something you do. It's not something you feel. And it's like that's the way they get around not actually having it. It's like, well, as long as I'm doing the good stuff for you, then I'm loving you. That's like putting the prayer wheel and making the wind go around. And it's like, yes, I know interiorly I hate you, but nonetheless, the wheel is turning, the candle is burning. So objectively, I love you. Right. And it's like, no one wants that, because what you don't want, like imagine it's your friend or it's your wife or something. And they're like, it's like, do you love me? And it's like, well, I did all these nice things for you.
I buy all your groceries. Yeah.
It's like, that's not what you want. You want someone to actually desire you and do things because they want to be in your presence. You don't want them, like you say, do you love me? And they say, well, I'm trying.
Right.
I'm doing the things. Right. That's obviously not what God is talking about. And when people try to offload that, it's like, well, look, I did good things for the homeless today, so I love them. Clearly, leave me alone. My prayer wheel is turning in the wind. Shut up. Right.
Have you had like homeless people come into your church congregation and have you seen sort of the reaction, like real reaction to true like poverty or mental disorder type stuff, whatever? It's hard, man. It's really difficult.
It's not even if you want to serve somebody, when they come walking in the door, you've got to fight against it. If somebody's like smells and that kind of stuff, like it's not easy. You're not going to be overcome with feelings of love toward this person. I was talking to my kids the other day about this, and so you don't do the right thing because you're overcome with feelings of do the right thingness. You do it because it's right, and then if you're doing it right, you're gonna feel, as a result of that, you will feel those feelings too. So like the feelings have to be there, otherwise you're not doing something right.
So you're saying you should hold the kayfabe until you get into character so hard you start to believe it,
and then you're the Undertaker.
And then you're the Undertaker, except for good.
In a good way, right? Right. Yeah, no, exactly. Because if I'm not always going to react the way I would like to think I would react to somebody initially. If they come to me with a need, or they come to me if they've wronged me and come to me asking forgiveness. If somebody comes to me asking forgiveness, I'm going to be mad at them while they're admitting what they did and asking me forgiveness. I've had this experience within the last couple of years. It disturbed me about myself for a while until I thought about it, and I think I've made peace with it. But you forgive them, because you're supposed to do it. That's the right thing. That's how I'm
Right,
going to
right.
honor God. But then, you know what? You have the sympathy and the love for the person, and the completion of the thing is the feeling of restoration that you have with the person in this example. So the
Right.
feelings do have to, they have to be there.
Yeah. Yeah. And a lot of it just ends up you're like Macho Man getting bit by Jake the Snake's anaconda or whatever it was. What kind of snake did he have?
What is the story on this? Just give us the story here, because
Suplex is the best at this. But tell that story. Like, what was he? Was it a boa constrictor? What was biting him?
I don't think it was a boa.
It was some venomous snake. It was a venomous kind of snake that Jake the Snake Roberts, the wrestler, carried around, and he had the venom sacs removed, obviously, but for safety purposes. But they grow back, and you have to remove them over and over again. But anyway, it eventually built up to the point in one of the matches with Macho Man Randy Savage that he tied up Macho Man in the ropes of the ring, and then brought out the snake and let it latch on to Macho Man's shoulder. I think it was shoulder, and just start twisting around. And Macho Man's going, ah!
Well, and this is like the, I guess, late 80s or so. Like, this was dramatic. Like, if you see something like that on screen today and you kind of think, oh, there's got to be some CGI involved or something like that. But, like, think about the live audience there and the people watching TV. That was a big deal. And, Jake the Snake, I think if you talk to just about anybody that pays even a little attention to the business historically, is regarded as the master of ring psychology. That snake he kept in a bag off to the side of the ring, and you always kind of had that looming threat of, like, your arm may get latched onto, right?
Right. Like, he might bring out the snake.
Yeah.
He's always got a snake hidden somewhere. And then he'd pull out a snake. And Macho Man, famously, I was listening to an interview with Jake the Snake one time, and he said, before they did that, Macho Man came to his locker room the day before and said, listen, brother, you want me to take that snake? You're going to have to show me that it's safe. And he made Jake the Snake get the snake to bite his own thigh, his own calf. Because Macho Man was like, how do I know that thing's not still venomous? Like, you do it first.
Trying to kill the champion. Oh, yeah.
And Jake was like, it was like 5 a.m. I just woke up. I'm cold. It's January. And then I have to let this snake bite my leg. And I'm like,
oh, dude.
He said he lost the snake in a hotel one time. Was it pleasant for anybody?
Could you imagine? Because their travel accommodations were not always the most pleasant. Could you imagine being responsible for? And I think he was required to tend to his own snake for the large part. Like, could you imagine just trying to go through, hitting the road with a giant snake? Always.
Well, yeah. The WWF didn't buy the snake for him. That was his gimmick, and he just bought his snake and was like, "Listen, I carry a snake now." And they're like, "Okay, I guess."
Sometimes too, like at shows, like he would have to go, like, "All right, who's got a snake in town?" And go to the yellow pages.
Yeah, like he couldn't always carry the snake on these international flights, and so he'd have to So if he's doing a gig in Japan, he goes there and then he's like, "Okay, where do I buy a snake?" And then now I need to defang the snake.
Wow,
his commitment.
Serious.
It was. Yeah, that's why pro wrestling was always that classic era. When would you say, Suplex, they really stopped caring so much about kayfabe?
I think you hit the nail on the head pretty early on. So the big shift, I guess, was in large part due to there was a steroids trial. WWF was the accused in the matter, and it became this really big deal where essentially I think it also ended up working out to where Vince McMahon had to kind of admit that pro wrestling wasn't real in front of a kind of an official capacity. It was either that, or there was also a situation where he was trying to get out of paying some kind of fee to like a local sports commission, and the only way to do that was to admit that it was not a legitimate sport in the traditional sense.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Yeah, so it's one of those, either steroid trial or it was that. I can't remember which, but that was sort of the big, you have kind of the man behind the curtain having to openly and publicly admit, okay, it's more for entertainment. So I'd say late 80s is when we kind of lost some of that illusion. And honestly, for the worse, I think we were better
I
off.
agree. I think just like when you break the kayfabe in a religion, it starts to break down. When you broke the kayfabe, I think that's when pro wrestling started to sort of not be as popular.
Yeah, well, in the 90s, we had this shift where the heels became who you cheered for, right? So you had like the NWO, and you had like Stone Cold Steve Austin, sort of this like in years past would have been more like a bad guy, right? Right. And then they become these heroic, like sweeping the nation popularity good guys, right? And I think part of that was due to our disillusionment with the whole thing breaking down, right? So you had kind of this revived popularity there.
Well, is that, and also I think it was a mirror of the larger growing distrust of like the powers that be.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah,
so the traditional bad guys, the ones that are on the outside of the supposed normal, right, or accepted, were started to become the heroes because they were challenging the status quo.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so you started to see that play out in the wrestling ring. Yep. Just like you brought up the other day, Suplex, you brought up who was it that when Operation Desert Storm was happening, he pretended to convert to Islam and be like in the ring just to get heat from the audience. He's like, "Oh yeah, well I'm actually for the Taliban or whatever."
Yeah, so it was Sergeant Slaughter, which
yeah.
Like part of the military, right? So probably the last guy you think would be an Iraqi supporter, but he was on the other side of the ring from Hulk Hogan, who is the ultimate, good guy, at least in the 80s he was.
The ultimate good guy American, yeah.
Yeah, so the only way to kind of build heat in that situation was, all right, I'm going to be an Iraqi sympathizer, and it went very poorly. Like people, even pro wrestling fans, are like, we've crossed a line here, guys. we can stand for a lot. We're okay with Mankind getting thumbtacks in his head, but like we cannot sympathize with the Iraqis even through a storyline.
Yeah. But you always see in pro wrestling, you would see what's happening in the larger culture distilled down into its most basic elements and then thrown in the ring together. That's why it's always been that pro wrestling and The Simpsons. I think if you have those two things together, you have all of American society.
Yep.
Captured. At least until recently when The Simpsons started getting not as good.
Hey, there was a Jesus kayfabe moment we talked about. I feel like it really, like, it almost lines up exactly with that bit you were talking about for Mankind earlier, where he said, like, I'm not gonna
sell this abortion.
So when Jesus is resurrecting Lazarus, he prays to God, right? And he says, and I know you always hear me, but because of the people who are standing by, I said this, that they may believe.
Yeah.
Right. So, Jesus obviously, didn't need to do sort of this public prayer to God because, as you're going to explain later, the Trinity, all three in one, right? So it's all kind of the same thing.
Right.
But he is intentionally doing it so that people can see it. And it's important. Like, I'm not saying that wasn't an important thing that Jesus did there, but it also kind of gives a little peek behind the curtain too, right?
It doesn't need to happen except for the theatrics.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because people need something like this. I think that gets into the idea of why the wicked need a sign. Because you always wonder, like, well, why is it wicked to desire a sign?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's like, well, you're pretending that the show is too serious.
Yeah.
In a way.
Yeah.
Like,
the show doesn't matter.
Or the show doesn't matter. Like, a religious zealot really is not someone that actually believes. They're someone that is afraid to admit they don't believe. Like most Catholics don't believe anything. But they just go, and if you ask them, like, it's like, yeah, suicide's a mortal sin and you go to hell, but my cousin Bob did it and he's in heaven. That's the general attitude for most things. Because, like, when push comes to shove, they're like, yeah, but that's hogwash, right? But the zealot is someone that's like, my cousin Bob did it and now he is in hell forever and now I just feel awful and I have to take revenge. Or, like, but actually I really will I have to believe that I will get 70 virgins. And to prove that, I need to kill somebody.
Mm-hmm.
Right? But most Muslims don't believe that. They don't think that if they go, they're like, yeah, but, that seems a little outlandish. But they say it on paper, right? But then in private, it's like, come on. And so there, you've got most people don't believe, and then a zealot is afraid to admit he doesn't believe. But then the real believer actually sort of transcends all of it because he acknowledges that it's there and that some people need the kayfabe, but also that it isn't necessary.
Well, I think what Suplex was saying earlier about admitting when you've come upon a mystery and being okay with it.
Yeah.
I think that's a key part of that.
Yeah.
A zealot is not going to cop to something he doesn't understand.
Right. And but see, once you do that, it starts getting into like if you take your dogma too seriously, this is what happened with Yugoslavia, is they took communist dogma too seriously. So towards the end of Yugoslavia, it was not only okay to not believe the communist ideology, that you publicly, everyone had to do it, but in private it was expected. It was like, yeah, but nothing really works that way. But it became to the point where, like, if you actually believed it, you were considered a threat to the state. Because they thought, well, look, everyone knows it isn't real, but we all pretend. Okay, that's stable. But these people really believe it, and if they really believe it, they're going to soon figure out it isn't true.
Yeah.
Right? Because they're going to be like, well, wait, things aren't working the way they're supposed to work if this was actually... And so those people would get sent to the gulag because they actually believed it in private.
It's kind of like starting a militia in America. It's
yes.
like, yeah, it's in the Constitution, but if you actually do it, we're sending you to Gitmo, you know?
You're right. It's like, yeah, but, man, that's the same. It's the same thing. And so, like, what happened in Yugoslavia was like, well... It's very similar to the Christmas Santa Claus children and things like, well, we know the economic system is bad and there'll need to be this great restructuring, but Tito is almost dead. He's very old. Let's just hold it off for a little while so that he doesn't get upset, right? And at the same time, Tito in his private life and in his journals and stuff is like, I know that the economy needs a hard reset, but the people think that it's there and we should hold it off as long as possible. And so the people know it needs to happen. Tito knows it needs to happen. Tito doesn't want to do it to upset the people. The people don't want to do it to upset Tito. So nobody does it. And so the economic restructuring never happens and it falls apart.
And I'd say that in pro wrestling, maybe a not exact corollary, but close, is like when pro wrestling tries to go shoot, which means when they try to go, full on reality. Yeah. And the WWE did this in dramatically devastating fashion back in 1998. So they did this thing called the Brawl for All. Right. And the theory behind the idea behind it was it's essentially like what UFC would be. We're going to have before your eyes in this ring where we normally do very silly, not silly is not the right word, but where we have this theatrical performance. We're going to give you real fighting, right? Uh-huh. And it was terribly boring. Like the crowd was chanting boring. They were chanting, "We want wrestling," and on top of that, they had professional wrestling performers competing in this. All of whom, or not all, almost all of whom, suffered legitimate, terrible injuries, right?
Right.
And couldn't perform, right? And it just overall became this kind of blight on the business. And when you get away kind of from that core of like what the audience expects and what they want, and you believe it so intensely, like this is going to be a real fight. It often kind of goes sideways, and I think what you're there is a prime example.
Yeah, real fighting is most of the time not very exciting.
Yeah,
like sports have all these rules to constrain it so that it becomes more so. Mm-hmm. Like judo, if you look at judo before the Olympics and then judo after the Olympics, they're two different things. Because judo beforehand had a lot of like leg grabbing. And like just very simple. I mean, it had the big throws too, but big throws are hard to pull off, right? And they require a lot of physical strength. And so it's easier just to like trip the legs, right? Much more efficient. Doesn't look flashy at all, and no one wants to watch it on TV. Mm-hmm. So for the Olympics, they outlawed any grabbing below the waist, right? So you can't even do them now. And so now it's just all judo has become is these giant throws that aren't the most practical for an actual fight, right? And so that's sort of what happened. Like, like the actual thing the dramatics don't always line up. But but like, I was talking about the Tito and the Yugoslavia. Mm-hmm. If you take the ideology too seriously, it breaks down. Same is true with the dogmatism. Like, if you take Catholic theology for real, you become a seed vacantist. Mm-hmm. You like there's this whole group of Catholics that claim there is no Pope because if you actually read all the documents, none of it fits together.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so you can't square that circle. And so the only thing you can say is, well, there is no Pope. And so all the smart people just go, yeah, I believe all the things.
I had some interaction with canon law recently.
Yeah.
And I found it to be the most insane, torturous nonsense I've ever tried to get through.
Yeah.
It
is.
It's just it's a rat's nest. You can't even. Canon law is insane.
Yeah. Well, the church has had several thousand years to iron out its wrinkles and make things appear smooth on the surface. That's the only problem with Mormonism is they haven't had the time to do it yet.
Is that their only problem?
Yeah, like in like 1,000 years, Mormonism will be like, "Oh, we never did that weird stuff. The people that did the weird stuff, they were heretics, and we and we expelled them. But it took a while, and they did. But that's the way everything goes. The Mormons will soon be just fine."
Okay, I'm going to tease something that we'll never get to the chagrin of our audience. We need to do a show on all the esoteric stuff with the Mormon temple.
Oh, we do. We should bring on a Mormon.
Yeah. And
Suplex, do you know any Mormons?
I don't know of any Mormons. Oh, there's Lindsay Sterling. She's a violinist that dances on YouTube. You know her? I think she's Mormon.
But do you know her personally?
Oh, no, I have no.
Oh, okay.
Maybe we can get my cousin. We can get my cousin on. He's a Mormon. I think he was married in the temple in Salt Lake, so he's been through all that stuff. Yeah,
I want to know. If
stuff.
it's true that Salt Lake has all those tunnels underneath it, preparing for the apocalypse.
That would not shock me at all.
Because Mormons like to prepare for the apocalypse as part of their dogmas, which is one of the most appealing things about Mormonism. It's just it's in the dogma that you must be a prepper.
Yeah, it's pretty rad. I'll give him points for that.
Well, don't you think, like, with the past couple of weeks that that stuff would have been publicized then, like people going underground? I
don't think that the pandemic has gotten to the point where we need to do. I think there's been a huge overreaction.
Yeah.
But two, I think it's just for Mormons. I think you'd just be like, no, just the Mormons go down there.
Finally, now's our moment, guys. Let's go. Oh, and they charge down the tunnel. It'll be great.
Yeah. I believe there is truth to the rumor that Salt Lake City is covered in these tunnels.
Well, they had they had an earthquake there recently. What if that was underground construction? Like they're trying to finish it up real quick because they saw the pandemic thing coming.
I think that's the only reasonable option. I think they were exploding nuclear bombs down there to try and carve it out more quickly. I think that's the only reasonable conclusion anyone can come to.
Okay, good. Well, I'm glad we settled that.
Yeah, I got a wrestling and politics question for you guys. So, President Trump. Would you think? So, I mean, I feel like just sort of naturally, if you were to kind of make him a pro wrestling character, obvious heel, right? Like a bad guy, he's insulting people publicly and all that. But he's elected president, right? So people gotta like him, right? At least in enough of a majority to make it happen.
Right.
What do you think about that? Is he a definite heel, or is he kind of morphed into something totally different?
And he's like the anti-heel because Americans send him to Washington because they hate Washington.
Right. Exactly.
He's a living hand grenade.
Yeah.
That was my take on him anyway.
But no, really, that's a great point because the president was in the WWF a couple of times.
Yeah.
Like he and that's why he did so well in the thing is because he realized, oh, wait a minute, politics is no different.
He gets it.
This is all just a show, and if I give the best show, I will be elected.
Yeah, and he blew it out of the water because of that. Yeah.
It doesn't matter if I'm quote unquote electable or respectable. I just have to do the best theatrics.
And the last guy to kind of inhabit that archetype so well, who was the last one that did it? Ronald Reagan, also an actor.
That's true. If you, because it is not like I hate to break this to our listeners, but politics is not real.
Yeah, it's not.
None of the people saying the things believe any of it.
No,
they don't. It's all a show, and after it's over, a lot of them go get barbecue together.
Yeah,
and hang out at each other's house. It's not real.
Yeah,
but they pretend very hard that it is. But if you want to get into politics, all you have to do is just realize that it's all a big reality TV show. And I think we're going to see more of that going forward. It's going to be more obvious. Like I saw a great tweet the other day that got me thinking. This is actually what got me thinking about this. I don't remember who tweeted it, but he said, you know how the point where sometime in the late 90s, pro wrestling just gave up on trying to pretend it was real and the fans didn't care.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
They kept going. And then he's like, we're about to that point with news and politics.
Yeah.
People are going to realize it isn't real, but they're just like, okay, but still it's fun.
But then what changes when American politics has its steroid trial moment? What changes?
Well, that's why I have been that precise thing is why I've been saying for a while that I think we're in the last stages of America, because when the lies, that's like the indulgences moment, or that's like giving everyone free money. It's like, okay, well, now the jig is up. Right. And so now something else has to happen. It may still be called America. I don't know, but it'll be a different form of government and society.
I feel like OK Boomer is a manifestation of that same thing.
Yeah.
It's part of that cycle.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Because, like you think about it, in the past, 12 years, we'd have 2 major bailouts, 2 major financial restructurings.
Yeah.
That's a symptom of a failed society.
Yeah.
Like if every decade you have to print $5 trillion and throw it at banks, like that's something Zimbabwe would do.
Is that really why they haven't repudiated student loan debt? Is because it would break kayfabe too hard, and
it would break kayfabe too hard. Look, you can't make contracts, this whole system based on contracts, and then say, well, we might just throw them away any moment.
Yeah.
Right? You can't. They're trying so hard to make this continue to function and keep up the show, but it's increasingly just not possible.
Well, I also wonder that about all the money that we owe to China in this China.
I saw a video of him of all the clips of Trump saying China on top of each other. It was China. I love China. Everyone, you gotta try it. How can you not love China? It's just over.
All right, that's going on the soundboard. It's China.
Yeah, China.
But in this time where the globalist system seems to be crumbling, why we haven't repudiated our debt to China? That must be kayfabe related.
Yeah, well, all of debt is kayfabe, really, because it's like here's the question: the whole globe is in debt. Well, who are we indebted to? Mars?
Yeah.
All right, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
Like, how can every country in the world be in a minus?
Right.
Right. I mean, it's because the debt comes in a metaphysical way from the future, so we're indebted to the future. But the future is also not real because it doesn't exist yet. So, it's all a manufactured thing. So, yeah, we're a lot of kayfabe breaking in the future, I predict. I think there's going to be a lot of fourth wall breaking in politics.
We're going to talk about like student loan, maybe think immediately of like a Bernie Sanders, something like that.
Yeah.
But I feel like he's not a kayfabe breaker as much as he is like a rival promotion. It's just a different kind of kayfabe that he's advocating for, right?
Yeah.
Right. Well, Joe Biden in his way is a kayfabe breaker because he's like, they're like, look, it doesn't actually matter if the president has dementia because he doesn't do anything. But look, it's okay. It's going to be fine. It's going to just stop looking too hard. Don't look behind the curtain.
We all know who's running the show. Everybody's cool with it. Yeah.
So I think that as the fourth wall crumbles, that's when the society is coming apart. And then a new lie will have to be built up that the next one revolves around.
So Joe Biden, a potential president Joe Biden, that could be the moment. That could be the ultimate steroid trial moment for America, is if we have somebody, we put somebody into office that should be in a senior care facility. Yeah,
it's like Caligula making a donkey a general or whatever. Like it's the same. Like the same thing happens all the time. At a certain point, your society devolves to a point where, like, to keep up the lie they try more and more insane things, and then it's like, everyone still pay your ticket.
If everybody's still committed to it for the entertainment value only, at least they're still committed to it.
Exactly.
Okay.
So I don't know. But yeah, I think think Suplex has to go here before too long, don't you? So we should probably wrap it up. And do you have any more Suplex? What are just leave us with your top maybe 2 or 3 wrestling moments?
You talking about from my career or from the industry as a whole?
Well, give us one from your career and then maybe from the industry as a whole.
Okay. I mean, industry as a whole, it's so many great things, right? It's kind of hard to even nail it down. But I feel like you've got to go back to WrestleMania 3. Got to go to Hulk Hogan slamming Andre the Giant. I mean, just the passion and the energy in that building.
Didn't he like tear all the muscles in his back doing that or something?
Maybe. Steroids don't make the strongest cohesive muscles, so there's some issues there.
Yeah, Andre was huge. Picking him up and throwing him down was not, and that was the most sad-looking suplex.
Oh yeah.
He was so heavy. There was no way if Andre had resisted even a little bit that it would work, and you could tell because Hulk was like, just trying to hold him in the air.
But it's kayfabe, right? I mean, the crowd loved it, even though it was the most dinky-looking body slam of all time, right? But they loved it. It was the David conquering the Goliath in some ways. So that's a huge one. For me personally, so you're talking finishing maneuvers earlier. Mine was the mayonnaise punch, and I didn't win a lot of matches, right? So I was a jobber. But I always had to be prepared because it's I'm talking about with The Rock and Hulk Hogan. Things can change on a dime. You can have an injury in a match, and the one that was originally going to go over as the winner doesn't win, and then I would have my moment in the sun and get to claim the victory. So for the mayonnaise punch, I always had to keep a bit of mayonnaise in my boots, right? And I would get just a handful of mayonnaise and just sock the guy like right in the face. Yeah.
That's a great line because it's a visual. There's a visual thing on his face that you hit him.
Sure.
And so it's a reminder. That's a great theatrical bit.
Yeah. So I was in a house show with the none other than we were just talking about him, the great Jake the Snake Roberts. And Jake had during his career several downward turns where he was kind of given to his demons, we call it in the wrestling business. Drugs, that kind of thing. And so he wasn't always at the top of his game and had to kind of accept some lower level gigs. So I actually got a match with Jake the Snake Roberts, and he was so drunk he couldn't even stand hardly. So we got the call from the ref. Jake can't do the DDT. He can't do the finish. Suplex, you're going over tonight. Hit him with a mayonnaise punch. And I clocked him with that mayonnaise. It was excellent.
Fantastic.
The pin 1, 2, 3. It was a career defining moment for me. And behind the curtain, he just threw glass bottles at me afterwards over and over. Yeah, yeah.
You're right.
It actually leads to my career-ending injury. Right, he clocked me with a bottle in the head.
Oh.
And, concussion, CTE stuff. Like it's so dangerous, man. I couldn't stay in the biz.
Yeah.
Wow.
A lot of that goes around.
Yep.
Oh, well, nice. Thank you for joining us tonight. Today, Suplex.
Hey, always a pleasure, guys.
Yeah,
Thanks for coming, man. It's fun.
Hard. You had to get up at a weird time in Brazil. I know
Sure.
that's not your. I know you do a lot of late night work with your currency exchange.
Yeah, a lot of it on the computer, but oftentimes I am meeting people in dark alleys.
Do you still do stuff with Bitcoin and whatnot and cryptocurrency exchange or no?
So the big thing right now are Glebe glows. You guys want to buy any Glebe glows, by the way?
I got some Link, so I think I'm okay.
Okay.
But I'm really betting the farm on this Link stuff, but I don't know. I still am a believer, but I don't know if it's gonna pan out. But
during the pandemic, people are flocking to Glebe glows. It's a currency kind of based on the price of paper towels at any point in time, and we are skyrocketing right now. So if you want to do well, I'll get you some Glebe glows, and you'll take it all the way to the bank.
All right.
Nihawa!
Woo!
Yeah. Hey, do you want to lead out with the Stossel bit here?
Yeah. Oh yeah. We recorded. This is a recording of. So there was Dr. D was confronted by a reporter in the 80s named Stossel, Mr. Stossel, who said, "Oh yeah, I think wrestling's fake," to him on camera, and then Dr. G just goes, "Is this fake? Open hand smacks him to the ground.
All right, here we go.
Maybe fake violence breeds real violence, and not just among the fans. Seems to egg on bullies like 6'6", 260-pound Dave Schultz. He used to be tag team partner of Eddie Mansfield, the wrestler who's just told us how every match is fake. I ask Schultz questions that I assume all wrestlers have been asked dozens of times.
What? Is this a good business? Yeah, it's a good business. I wouldn't be in it if it wasn't.
Why is it a good business?
Because only the tough survive. That's the reason you ain't in it. And this punk holding the camera reading he ain't in it. Reading these rednecks out here ain't in it because it's a tough business.
That's terrific.
What, is that all you got?
I'll ask you the standard question. You know,
Standard question.
I think this is fake.
You think it's fake? Huh? What the hell's wrong with you? That's open hand slap, huh? You think it's fake? You come like this, it's fake? Huh? Hey, it's the hell of the matter.
Enjoyed it, Suplex. Thanks for coming out, man.
Keep doing the Lord's work, guys.
We'll do it.
Every inch of you is amazing. You are beautifully and exactly where you're supposed to be right now. You are exactly where you are supposed to be. 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 You are